Carne guisada is a general term that only really means a meat stew. However, different regions have some different expectations of what it will contain, just as the wealthy class often have better ingredients to use and a team of cooks that can devote days to preparing dishes. This is really a starting point for several other dishes, two of which I'm going to show you here. It's quite different from the typical family or peasant-style versions, for good reason. Read the history of this recipe here if you want to know more. In a bowl, I've got the salt, cayenne, and black pepper. I'm going to add a tablespoon of flour to this. Give it a quick mix here. This is just a little bit of extra seasoning. And then the short ribs are going to go in. I'm going to toss them around to coat them first. And these are going to go into a deep fryer. And meanwhile, while that beef is cooking in the deep fryer, I'm starting off 120 grams of sliced onion in a dry pan, no oil at all. We're going to start cooking this to char up. While the onions are cooking, I got the other stuff set up. This is the meat that was cooked in the deep fryer. I've got a handful of different dried chilies, some of which I dried myself. You can use, an interesting selection, whatever you can get your hands on. A whole garlic head that was peeled and trimmed. It's about 35 grams. And this is the rest of the flour and seasoning mix that didn't stick to the meat. We're also going to keep that and wait till these onions are ready, and then we're going to add the pepper. Okay, and when you start to see some parts of the onion that are very dark brown, we're going to add all the chilies to this. Don't stir around too much, but just make sure everything's distributed evenly. At least give it another couple of minutes now. And after a minute or so, you start smelling this aroma, the powerful aroma of the chilies that are cooking strongly. So now I'm going to add the tomato. I want to call it tomato sauce, but what this really is just a puree of tomatoes. And turn the heat down from 8 to 6. The heat's a little bit lower, and I'm going to cook this until it starts to get thick. And about 5 minutes later, this is appreciably thicker, as you can see. Looks more like a tomato paste now. Now I'm going to add the meat in. It's deep fried. And I'm going to add water. Enough water to cover it. And all the garlic. To add the rest of the seasonings and the flour. Some bay leaf, dash of cinnamon, then an entire tablespoon of ground cumin, and a tablespoon of dried oregano. You can give this a stir and bring this up to a simmer. When it comes up to a simmer, I'm going to put a lid like this on it, partially cover it, and the exact amount of cooking time isn't especially important here. We need to cook it till it's tender. It's going to be cooked for 2 or 3 hours, but after it comes up to a simmer, now we're going to add that sweetened condensed milk to it. Why you don't do this sooner, I'm not really sure. But this is the way it's done. Honestly, I have no idea why this isn't added sooner. It's strange to me too, but I'm just following the way it's done. So, okay, that's in. The lid goes back on. It's going to stay at a simmer for quite a while. After about 3 hours of simmering, I've fished the meat out to a platter. You have to work through it yourself, of course, and pick out the bones, separate the meat from the bones. The liquid that the meat was goes through a sieve into a second can. The solids are discarded, and this liquid's going to start to be reduced. This is the liquid that the meat was cooked in with the chilies and all. I'm reducing it now And you can see it's not a rolling boil, but it's a good strong simmer. As you're working through this and taking the meat off of the bones, you have to watch out for parts where there was connective tissue that won't break down any further. You got to pull that out. Let's see if I can find a piece to show you. Like, see this tough edge here? This has to be trimmed off. You're going to have to take a knife and work your way around it, because this will end up just being a tough, nasty piece in somebody's mouth. This is no good. We want to get it just to where it's just the meat and the fat is all. Now, once you've got it to this point, you're going to start cutting it up into small pieces. You could use a food processor for this if you want, but I like using a knife, because that way if I made some mistake and I left some piece of bone or some tough piece of cartilage in there, I'm going to find it with the knife, and I get a second chance at making sure that everything's perfect. So it doesn't take long, really. This meat's pretty soft. Just make sure you work with it while it's still warm. Not hot to the point where it burns your fingers, but warm. If you let it get cold, it'll be much harder to do this task effectively. You'll have a harder time distinguishing what the tough parts are from the good parts. The next day, you have the beef that's been refrigerated overnight, and you've got this lovely dark sauce that's been gradually transformed just by leaving it in the refrigerator. It kind of reacts with itself, and it's much more mellow and nice now. Now, there's several different things you can do with this. I'm going to show you one application right now. Yeah, this is quite heavily smoked corn. You just run a knife down it and take it off the cob. And a non-stick pan on a medium heat, it's 5 out of 1 to 10. I'm going to add a little bit of water, and then I'm going to add some of this beef that was cooked, braised, along with the fat from it. And we're going to start cooking this to render the fat and then crisp it up in its own fat, similar to how you prepare duck confit. After about 3 minutes, it starts to sizzle. The water helps conduct the heat and helps melt the fat faster. That's why it's there. And you can see in the video here how it's darkening up as it's being cooked. And there's still pieces, though, like this. This is mostly fat. It's not melted yet, so this is not done. We need to render this fat out and really cook this meat in the fat. So we're just going to let it go for a while more. This is what you want to see. This meat's pretty crispy now. It's deeply colored. Now I'm going to add some of that sauce in. And the smoked corn. And there's some chopped up scallion, the green part only. Going to add a little bit of this in too. Still with the heat on medium. Going to cook this a little bit more and taste it and adjust the salt level in just a couple minutes here. We're looking to warm up the sauce, but we're going to cook it a little bit. Actually, I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.